The sky was calm, painted in soft shades of orange as the sun dipped toward the horizon, when Captain Daniel Hayes, one of the youngest and most promising pilots in the aviation industry, noticed something wasn't right. The private jet he was flying had been cruising smoothly above the endless blue ocean, carrying only one high-profile passenger, a powerful, elegant CEO known for a sharp mind and unshakable authority. Her name was Elena Carter, a woman who had built an empire from nothing, feared in boardrooms and admired across industries. But at that moment, none of that mattered. Because within seconds, everything was about to fall apart. A sudden engine failure shattered the calm. Warning alarms screamed through the cockpit, flashing red lights reflecting in Daniel's focused eyes. He acted instantly, his training kicking in, his hands steady even as his heart pounded. "Brace for impact," he shouted, though he knew Elena likely couldn't hear him clearly from the cabin. The aircraft trembled violently, losing altitude fast. Below them stretched an unfamiliar island, isolated, untouched, and their only chance of survival. Daniel made a split-second decision. With extraordinary precision, he guided the failing jet toward a narrow stretch of beach. The landing was brutal. Metal screeched, sand exploded into the air, and the aircraft skidded violently before finally coming to a halt. Silence followed, heavy, eerie silence. For a moment, Daniel couldn't move. Then instinct took over. He unbuckled himself, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, and rushed toward the cabin. "Is anyone there?" he called out, his voice tense. And then he saw her. Elena Carter lay unconscious, her head tilted to one side, her golden hair scattered across her face. Even in that moment, she looked graceful, almost unreal. But there was no time to admire, she needed help. Daniel carefully lifted her into his arms, checking her pulse. It was faint but steady. Relief washed over him, but danger still lingered. He carried her out of the wreckage just as a small spark ignited behind them. Within seconds, smoke began to rise. Daniel didn't stop. He walked across the hot sand, away from the burning aircraft, until he reached a safer distance beneath the shade of palm trees. Hours passed before Elena slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was the vast ocean stretching endlessly before her, and then Daniel, sitting nearby, watching over her with quiet concern. Confusion filled her gaze. "Where am I?" she whispered. "You're safe," Daniel replied gently. "We crash-landed on an island. But you're okay, that's what matters." Elena tried to sit up, wincing slightly. "My plane, my company, everything," she murmured, her mind struggling to process the situation. Daniel shook his head. "Right now, none of that matters. Survival comes first." For the first time in years, Elena Carter had no control. No assistance. No meetings. No power. Just an unknown island, and a man who had just saved her life. The first few days were the hardest. Food was scarce, and the reality of their situation slowly sank in. Daniel used his survival knowledge to gather coconuts, find fresh water, and create a temporary shelter using debris from the plane. Elena, who had spent her life in luxury, struggled at first. But something inside her began to change. She watched Daniel closely, his determination, his calmness, the way he never complained despite the harsh conditions. He wasn't just a pilot, he was strong, selfless, and quietly brave. "You didn't have to save me," Elena said one evening as they sat by a small fire Daniel had managed to start. Daniel looked at her, surprised. "Of course I did. That's my job." "No," she said softly. "It's more than that. You risked your life." He smiled slightly. "I guess some things are just instinct." Days turned into nights, and nights into something softer. They talked, really talked. About dreams, fears, regrets. Elena shared stories of her rise to success, the sacrifices she made, the loneliness that came with power. Daniel spoke about his passion for flying, his humble beginnings, and his belief that life wasn't about status, but about moments. Somewhere between survival and silence, something unexpected began to grow. It started with small things, a glance held a second too long, a shared laugh over something trivial, the way Daniel always made sure Elena was okay before himself. And Elena, for the first time, felt seen not as a CEO, but as a person. One night, under a sky filled with countless stars, Elena broke the silence. Do you ever think, maybe this happened for a reason? Daniel looked at her, the firelight dancing in her eyes. A plane crash, he said with a soft chuckle. That's a strange reason. She smiled faintly. Maybe not the crash, but what came after. There was a pause. A moment where everything felt still. And then, without overthinking, without fear, their hands found each other. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. But it was real. Days later, rescue finally came. A distant helicopter spotted the wreckage and landed on the beach. Help had arrived. Civilization was within reach again. But something had changed. As they prepared to leave, Elena looked back at the island, the place where she had lost everything, and found something far more valuable. She turned to Daniel, her voice soft but certain. What happens now? Daniel met her gaze, a quiet smile forming. That depends. Do you want this to end here? Elena shook her head, her eyes shining. No. I don't. And just like that, two completely different worlds collided, not in chaos, but in something beautiful. Sometimes, life doesn't ask for permission before changing everything. Sometimes, it takes a fall to help you find what truly matters. If you enjoyed this powerful story of survival, love, and destiny, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next story might just touch your heart even more deeply. Red Heart.